Hey, folks. So, we're bringing back an episode from the Security Without Borders podcast that me and Derek Smith did a couple of years back. We had a really interesting guest called Jack Barsky. That's not his real name. My German's not that good, so I can't really pronounce it. But Jack is an interesting character where he was born and raised in East Germany, which is a country that no longer exists. He was then recruited by the KGB, which was the secret services of the Soviet Union, or the former Soviet Union that no longer exists. And he was a undercover agent for, I think it was 18 or 19 years, right, in the USA. So we sat down with him, we interviewed him, he told us about his life story and how he became a spy and ended up working in tech in the 80s and 90s. They even did a TV show about him, or it was based on his life. It was dramatized. It was called The Americans. It was quite famous a few years back, quite a popular show. So I'm just going to, let the episode roll, and hopefully you're as entertained and, to be quite honest, like astonished at what Jack has done and achieved in his life and his role as a KGB spy. So with that said, let's get on with the episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Security Without Borders. My name is Derek Smith, one of your co-hosts, and as joined by always, Mr. Kevin Evans, our other co-host. Kevin, how's it going, buddy?
Going great, man.
Good.
Busy, but yeah.
Springtime is upon us. The weather is getting warmer, so I expect less calls about snow and you hiking and 10 feet and all that sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, the heat is finally on. So
there we go.
I'm looking forward to spring.
All right. Well, speaking of heat, nothing puts on the heat more inside an organization than insider threats. And I think it's an apropos discussion to have with our guest that we have today. Our guest is a German American, originally from East Germany. So for those of you that don't know, that Germany used to be two countries before 1989 and when the Berlin Wall came down. He was born and raised in, I'm going to get this right, Upper Lusitazi.
Nine.
My German's getting a little rusty. All right. Mr. Jack Barsky, welcome, fine sir. How are you?
Yeah, great meeting you guys. To give a description, as a matter of fact, genetically I'm only half German. The other 2 quarters are Polish and Czech, because where I grew up, there's a triangle where the 3 countries
intersect,
come together. Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe that it could be Lusitania. I don't know. I don't really care. We had a different word for it in German, and you can't pronounce it. No, Americans can't pronounce it, man. Lausitz. Oh, you got it.
What was it? Lausitz? Like that?
No, you don't.
Terrible.
No, terrible.
So I'm showcasing the fact that my family is also originally from Germany, and I took German for a number of years when I was a kid.
Oh, you're cheating.
I'm omitting a little bit of truth there.
Just I got to add a curious little item with regard to German and American. My daughter Chelsea, the older one, the one that is responsible for me being here, she decided that she wouldn't keep the name Barsky because it was stolen. So she changed her last name to my German last name, and she can't pronounce it. It's pronounced Dittrich, and she said Dittrich. She said that's what it is. Yeah. Lots of odd things in my life, trust me. Mm-hmm. Not all of them have to do with espionage. It's just odd, or maybe I remember the odd things because I'm tuned into oddities.
No, that's good. So let's get into your life, Jack, we've talked about where you're from. You kind of grew up in East Germany, right? And that's an area of the world where I think a lot of people, at least Western countries, right, weren't overly familiar with. So can you talk about what your childhood was like growing up in that area of the world during, late 60s, early 70s? What was life like for you over there?
Well, let me tell you something. The East Germany itself, uh, had a very poor start after World War II. It was overrun by the Soviet army, and they didn't treat the Germans kindly. That's understandable, but there was a lot of rape going on. And then the Soviet Union, as for reparations, that took everything that they could take with them, even railroad tracks, and brought them home with them. So the country had to start fresh with regard to industry. And on top of it, the soil was pretty poor, so agriculture wasn't doing very well. Literally, I grew up, there were two really poor sections in Germany, even before the war started, and there was where I grew up, and the Saar. It's way west, bordering on France. It was really tough, but the thing is, I didn't know that we were poor because so was everybody else.
Right.
And actually, as I now reflect, that I had it better than most of my classmates, same age, comrades. And the reason was that my parents were both teachers, and the communists that were ruling in East Germany were pretty smart that way. They knew that they had to treat teachers very well because the teachers had to toe the party line to raise the next generation and to perpetuate communism in the country. And they did a good job. So the bottom line is, two teacher salaries really were very helpful. Now, with all the money that they may have had, it couldn't buy much. We had meat once a week, and on the school food that we were getting lunch Monday through Friday into Saturday. Actually, no, Saturday we didn't get it, but we had a half day, and that food was sometimes so bad that we just threw it out, and we'd rather go hungry because it just was like awful stuff. And on Saturday was always soup day. And again, it was normal. When you grow up like this, this is all you know. The one good thing was that there was almost no crime. I cannot recall that anybody that I knew was victimized by crime, because this is what the dictatorship does. They rule with an iron fist. So we were allowed to play in the dark in the summer when it was dark outside, and nobody told us. We weren't even forbidden to go someplace away from where we lived. But even clothes, nice looking clothes. Into my years in college, we couldn't get half a decent pair of blue jeans, and the shoes were like. When I came to the U.S. and I bought myself a pair of shoes, Florsheims, and I went like, what? They fit so well, because we had every pair of shoes in Germany. I had to break in, which means my heels developed sores, and I had two pair of lederhosen. When they were new, they made a noise when you walked. They had to be broken in too. And in all of this, but we just had. This was a very uniform kind of country with regard to the people that weren't in power. There was an elite whose life we didn't get to see. Party elite, and interestingly enough. tenured professors at universities were considered like ruling. I know I accidentally found out what the kind of salary that they made, and it was like like 5, 6, 7 times higher than your average working stiff.
Oh wow.
Interesting. So, just to set the context here, when Jack's talking about the ruling government, he's talking about he lived underneath a communist structure, right? Which is different from what we're used to in the West, right? So, we still have
strictly hierarchical. The ruling body was the Central Committee of the Communist Party. That's where all the decisions were made. There was a sort of like in Russia these days. The country was called the German Democratic Republic. It wasn't
GDR.
democratic, but we played democracy. We had elections, but the first time I voted, I looked at the ballot. It had only one name on it, and all you could do is cross that name out. But you wouldn't. That wouldn't have been a good idea because people were looking over your shoulder. So the election results was roughly 95% for the candidates, and they were considered unity candidates, but they were all pretty much appointed by the Communist Party. There were other parties, but they were undermined and not undermined. There were communists undercover in those parties. There were undercover communists in the church as well. So some pastors reported on their own flock, and as you may have heard that their reporting went radical. That sometimes husband reported on wife or children reported on their parents. None of that. What I just told you, I knew growing up. Okay, I grew up in a bubble, and there was I had no reason to dissent because I didn't hear any dissent from anybody else, and So, and as I got older, the system treated me very nice because I became a very good student. I was a high school valedictorian, and then I did the same thing in college. And because of that, and I joined the party. I was active in the youth movement. I played college basketball, and that got me a scholarship called the Karl Marx scholarship. That was, now listen to this, limited to 100 concurrent holders in the entire country. So I had it made. I mean, I knew I was going to be a tenured professor. So I had no reason to even take a peek as to what's wrong with this country. And if there occasionally there was certain dissent that appeared at university, and we just kicked them out. And I was all for kicking them out. So So see how you get corrupted. I thought I was a really nice guy, and I was trying to please everybody, but that corruption, that especially when it starts early in life, is very difficult to resist.
Well, you don't know any better, right? Because you've just got these people around.
No, and you will become so incredibly proud of yourself. You become your own god. This god unfortunately failed with the ladies. You know, I know I was good looking. I look at the pictures now and I said, well, he was good looking, but I was also shy.
Right. Okay. So you went to university, and let's talk about, because I was gonna mention the Stasi, right? So
yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to give some context. So when I got my first cybersecurity role in an organization, I had this guy who served in the British Army, right? And he used to come up to me and call me Stasi Kev, right? That was my nickname, right? And I was like, who's the Stasi? He was like, yeah, well, you're there, right? Like, securing everything and checking everything that we're doing. And I was like, he'd obviously served through the Cold War, Jack, right? And I had to Google it, and it was the secret. Well, is it the secret police or the intelligence?
Oh yeah, it was
East Germany, right?
Just like the KGB. It was structured very similar to the KGB. Right. It was the FBI, the CIA, the police force,
right,
all in one organization. And here's another. I got to volunteer that because you couldn't possibly ask a question that will give you that answer. My best friend, college friend, who just passed away, unfortunately. He was actually, I think, smarter than me. We studied chemistry. He was very good in the lab, and he was just brilliant, but he had bad study habits, so I beat him as far as grades were concerned. But he wound up, he was hired by the Stasi as a scientist.
Right.
And he worked his way up and eventually became the head of the forgery department. He ran the forgery department. And when I met him again after so many years, he told me that this department sold forged West German passports to the KGB. So there's a good chance that I traveled with false passports that my best friend made.
Could you imagine that going across his desk and your name's there, right? Well,
yeah, and I just watched an interview that he gave maybe 3-4 years ago, and he was still defensive. He would not admit that he had served the wrong master. That's hard to do if you first believed in the cause and then things weren't quite as good as you thought they should have been, but still you were still fighting the good fight, and all of a sudden, bam, and you resent, or you crawl into a corner and assume the fetal position. This generation, my peers, the majority of them did not do well when the wall came down.
That's what they, from my reading of history books, right, or listening to interviews and conversations, that's how communism survived, right, in the Soviet Union for so long, is because people were blindly loyal, right, to the cause, to the people, right? That's how communism works, right? So
and it's very, very hard to do, but particularly when you're near the end of life and you have to admit to yourself, that was not a worthwhile life to live, unless, in my case, I had plenty of good time ahead of me when I left the KGB. I could completely remediate, so to speak,
right,
and do a lot of good things going forward. I did quite a few bad things up to that point, but I could very slowly decontaminate. It wasn't like, okay, now you got to face the music, and I was able to face the music sort of gradually, and by just studying things and being surrounded by people that, I was, even when I first came to the U.S., I was always looking for the really bad capitalists, and I couldn't find any. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any, but, where I worked, they were all pretty nice to me.
Right. Okay. Let's just circle back. So you did chemistry, did you say, at university, right? You were training to be, right, and educating in chemistry. So how did you go from chemistry to then being approached, I take it, via proxy, right, and recruited by the KGB? Do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, you said the right word. The first individual that talked to me was a native German.
Right.
And initially I thought, and that has been misinterpreted. I think that may have been even the first interview that I gave. I thought he was Stasi. And maybe when I interviewed with 60 Minutes, I still thought so. But I have enough information to know that he was actually a collaborator with the KGB. They had their own Germans that worked with them. Yeah, and they sent him, and I keep on stating this, and this is not because I want to make a joke. That was the dumbest of the KGB folks who ever spoke with me. I don't know why they thought that he would be the right guy to make a first contact, and I tell you why. He walked into, it's on a Saturday. I'm sitting in my dorm room and I'm doing a little bit of homework, and there's a knock on the door, and normally we had very few strangers come into that dorm. So normally the knock meant another student just alerted you that he was going to come in.
Right.
But there was a knock and nobody came. So I knew there was a stranger. He walks in here, in there, and he made sure that I was the person he wanted to talk to. He asked my name. And I didn't ask him anything. So he introduced himself. He said, I'm from Carl Zeiss Jena. Zeiss, as we pronounce it. It was an optical concern that had one location in East Germany and one in West. And the town where I studied, the factory, that was the number one employer. I mean, and they produced really good stuff that they actually could sell in the West. That was a rarity in East Germany. So he said, I just want to talk with you a little bit what your plans are after you graduate. At that point, and that was the dumbest statement, period, because there was no recruitment going on. After you were finished with your studies, you were assigned.
Selected, right? Kind of thing.
Unless you were in the top, you could stick around and get your doctorate, and then you were assigned. You couldn't just pick like, oh, I'm going to go over there. No. So he didn't know how the country he lived in functions. So that's why I thought he's probably Stasi. And I played along, a bunch of small talk, this and that. And then abruptly he changed his tune and he said, you know what? I just, there was a bit of a white lie, so to speak. And he said, I'm not from Carl Zeiss, I'm from the government.
Right.
And can you imagine one day to work for the government? This is another stupid 2 sentences. I could have asked him what part of the government.
What as, right? Yeah, exactly.
If I'm naive and I don't already think that he's Stasi and he's just feeding me a bunch of lies, if he says government, I say, well, what part? Maybe the State Department. That'd be good. I could have made him sweat so badly, but I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew that this wasn't recruitment, and I pretty much guessed it was a recruitment to do espionage. And I found that interesting because what we know about espionage is the pretty much what Americans know who have consumed too much James Bond. We had our own James Bond. He was doing good work on behalf of the communist state, and he'd also lived a good life. So
right.
that made me curious. And there was at that point, it wasn't recruitment. It was just the first contact. Recruitment took another 18 months because they studied me thoroughly to determine whether I was the right recruit. Because I wasn't going to be, they came after me to do what I wound up doing and, operate as a lone wolf and as an illegal, rather than being part of a team with a bunch of Russians, okay? So they were very careful in selecting the right people. And if they did anything right, they picked the right guy. Because I actually broke the record of living in the United States undercover, undetected. It was 19 years. The previous record was held by Rudolf Abel, famously portrayed in The Bridge of Spies. He made it to 10.
Oh wow, Jack.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I should get a first prize, but I don't know who would give that out.
So you were approached by an East German, did you say, right? From
Oh,
the
absolutely,
government?
yes.
So I just want to clear this up. So the KGB was the Soviet Union, right? And then you had
Yes.
the Stasi, right? And so I didn't realize that the KGB recruited outside of Russia, right? If that makes sense, right? Because you had the Soviet bloc and everything else.
They also recruited in other communist states,
Right. Okay.
such as Hungary, Poland, and with regard to looking at material for the job that I did, I think they focused on countries where the language spoken is a little closer to English because Russians, it's a rare Russian that can get rid of a Russian accent. So the Baltic states may have been good candidates.
Right. A bit softer, right? Yeah.
And possibly, because somebody lives in Romania and one of the parents speak French because Romanian is sort of close to French, and grows up speaking French. There were illegals in all the NATO countries, not very well known because the information about these illegals was shared by this Matrokin fellow, and he there was not a similar kind of volume about how they operated against France or West Germany and so forth. The United States was the main target. We called them in Russian "Glavny protivnik," the main adversary.
Wow.
And you just heard me pronounce Russian pretty well too. I don't speak
that sounded
it,
pretty. Yeah. It sounded pretty cool. So you met this character that you said wasn't very good at his job, basically. So when did you first meet? I'm going to say I might be getting the terminology wrong here, but your KGB recruitment officer / handler, or like,
well,
you knew he was Russian, right? You knew he was more serious.
At this point, I wasn't being handled, but I don't know there's an official term for that.
Right.
We agreed to meet for lunch, at the most expensive, really good restaurant in town. And I still remember what I had. I had rump steak and French fries.
Nice.
And that was a place I at that time couldn't quite afford yet. But anyway, so I walk in there and I thought I was going to meet the guy. Well, I met him, but there was another person sitting at the table, and I didn't know if I should approach, because in those days, strangers, there were not enough seats in restaurants, so strangers could share a table. They would just ask, may I sit down here? So I walked slowly. He gets up and he says, come on. I want to introduce you.
GPS signal lost.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's the lady I have a lot of arguments with. Jeez, let me just turn this completely off. I don't need the phone. Okay. And he said, I would like to introduce Comrade Herman. We are working with our Soviet comrades. And then he said, I got to leave now. I have something to do. So he disappeared. He said goodbye. And at that point, I was in the hands of the KGB. I had no clue what was going to happen. I wasn't guessing. See, there's this thing, the German discipline, even though I was anti-authoritarian, still am, but there's, when you don't rock the boat.
Yes.
And I was just like trying to figure out curiosity. I mean, curiosity is one of my top character traits. I just wanted to see what they had in mind. At that point, I had not considered that this will one day turn into, me operating as an agent. I just wanted to see what's going on. And of course, I felt flattered too. So, and this guy, Herman, that wasn't his real name. Once I asked him, he got really mad when I asked that question. Is your real name German? because that's the Russian version, and that was a no, because Herman was probably his cover name,
Right.
So I also learned not to ask a bunch of questions, because they would share with me. I found that out. They would share with me what they thought I should know and nothing else. I should know to function. So Herman and I started meeting once a week, at first in his car, and then I was sort of promoted, because at that point he made a decision I was worth studying further, and then we met in an apartment that was occupied by a female party member, and she was trusted, so she would leave the apartment when we met. And that's when we started talking. We started talking about what I was doing, my life. He became a sort of a ersatz father to me. 10 years older, and my father had left us, the family, when I was 16. So I shared everything with him. And that impressed him, because this is just logic, because I gave the impression that I'm a really, really deeply honest individual, because I shared with him when I made mistakes that only I knew. I shared with him that I had a problem with the girls, and he encouraged me. He said, "You know what? You're good looking. They want guys too, so don't worry about it." and on and on. And then, we talked about, roughly, he decided to explain to me what it would be like to be operational in West Germany, mind you. Was no idea that the United States was not in the picture. He gave me some tasks to do. One of them I absolutely hated, but the first one I didn't hate so much. He showed me a building in town, and he said, "Can you find out what they are doing inside there?" And I was pretty clever. There was a bus stop with a little covered booth next to that building, and I left a briefcase there. And the next day I rang the bell and asked the person who answered the bell if somebody maybe picked up a briefcase. Obviously, I risked losing it, but somebody had picked it up. And so then I started making small talk, and before you know it, I had lunch with a guy. That was pretty good. I wasn't taught. They look for people who can, who will be very creative, finding solutions to what may be impossible situations. The one task that I hated, when a couple of times he gave me an address and a name there with the people who lived there, and I should find out, they had relatives in the West. I should find out a little bit about those relatives. And that one I just absolutely hated doing, but I was still successful, because in those days I had a full beard, and that was rare. And my cover was I pretended to be a student of sociology, and I'm there to do a survey. Would you mind answering some questions? So I added, questionnaire, and most people will, at least in those days in East Germany, they would have no problem with that. And again, there was a couple of questions that's sort of eased into the topic of West Germany. And then all of a sudden, the lady volunteer says, "Oh yeah, my cousin, he's going to come visit next week." "Oh, wow. What does he do for a living?" "Oh, he works in a factory where they make guns." Okay.
Oh.
So it, you got to get lucky too.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but it's a very roundabout way of interrogating somebody, and they don't even know it. Okay. So this is what happened, and Herman also gave me. I couldn't take it with me, but he gave me, while I was in the apartment, he would just like read something, and he gave me West German magazines to read. So I could familiarize familiarize myself as to what's in there.
Yeah.
And, obviously I went right to the cartoons. They were better than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that went on for 18 months. And I think what really impressed him was it was between my sophomore year and my junior year. My friend, the guy who wound up at the Stasi, he was just as adventurous as I was. And we decided to hitchhike all the way from East Germany down to the Black Sea in Bulgaria. That was an adventure. In the Eastern countries, hitchhiking was like, you never knew where you wind up, where you would sleep. Hotels, there was not enough money, and you had to go through countries where you didn't speak the language. We slept outdoors like 6 or 7 times. All we had was a map and enough money. There was a limit how much you could exchange per country. We had enough money to just make it through. Mm-hmm. And I shared that with Herman, and it must have impressed him really well, because there's I found a list of character traits that they were actually looking for. And that list was shared with a journalist after the KGB had been dissolved. And the fellow who gave the interview was the one-time head of the Directorate S. That was where the illegals were handled. And one of the character traits was a well-controlled inclination to adventure. They were looking for adventurous people, and I was adventurous as a young boy. I would climb up trees that I shouldn't have climbed up and fall down and stuff like that. Highly risk tolerant. So if you're not risk tolerant, you don't do that job. You might do a job where you go out and you're on a team and you have diplomatic cover, very low risk. But this job,
you got to be
that's
willing.
scary for most people. I wouldn't even think of doing that. So as I said, they did a good job trying to figure me out and determining that I was the right. I had the right stuff to do that job, and this is when they finally recruited me. You want to know how that worked?
Yeah, I was just about to say we've had some social engineering experts on the show.
Yeah.
And they basically have the same kind of character traits, you would say, as well, right, Derek? Like,
very controlled, very adventurous, because their goal or their job is to infiltrate these various companies, much like you were talking about the building.
Yeah, I get it. And you want to stay incognito, because you could easily wind up in jail, same as I, and chances to be uncovered are not very low. You're taking a risk.
Yeah. I guess the difference for them is it's their job, and then there's at least somebody on the inside that's aware of what they're doing. So if they get caught, they have a safe word or something as a way out.
By the way, my handler in Moscow was aware of what I'm doing, only what I shared with them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was a he or a she or whatever. Most likely he didn't know my real name. Didn't have to, because the moment I joined the KGB, and this is when I was asked if I was ready, I became a state secret of the Soviet Union, and my identity was extremely protected, extremely well protected, because if an illegal gets caught, you never know. He could continue to work and be turned for whatever reason. If you start living in another country, and you have relationships, and I wound up having a child, you may have a good incentive not to choose jail, but to choose to cooperate with counterintelligence. So this is how it worked. Herman one day said, "Hey, we need to do a little more training for you, and I can't do that. So you're going to go to Berlin for 3 weeks."
Right.
So in Berlin, I met another one of those guys like Herman, and he did a little more like real training for sure, but that was just a cover story, because at the next to last day of the 3 weeks, he said, "I'm going to introduce you to somebody at headquarters." That's so we went to the headquarters of the Soviet Army in East Germany, which also was the headquarters of the KGB. And he didn't tell me what to expect at all. Again, they were very secretive, always like this. So we walked into an office that was very well equipped, a lot of propaganda, communist paintings, and the bust of Dzerzhinsky, the founder of the Chekhov, which became the KGB, was on the desk. And then in comes this short guy, like is somebody you easily overlook. He had no physical presence. But then he opened his mouth. Incredibly strong psychological energy came out of his mouth. He spoke his voice was completely, it didn't fit his body, let's put it this way.
Wow.
And then he started saying a bunch of things like the propaganda is stuff that I didn't need to hear. I understood enough Russian to know what he was talking about. It was about, the bad capitalists and the West Germans, the Nazis in West Germany, and the United States to being the main target in blah blah blah, and it's important for us to be fighters for freedom and blah, and I started getting really bored. What the heck is he telling me this stuff for? Well, I think that was planned, because the guy wasn't dumb, for sure. You don't get to get this job if you're a dummy. Because he at one point he radically changed his tone, and he caught me by surprise, and I think that was the whole idea. And he just said, "Okay, now I want to know, are you in or not?" I was no way prepared to answer that question, because I hadn't made up my mind. I was just playing along. I had not figured out, not thought about if I ever get that question, how I would answer it. I just pushed it into the future. So I played for time. I said, "Well, amina. You know what that is?" No, the honeymooners.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so sorry, I'm a little bit of a ham. So I played for time. I said, "Well, I can't give you an answer because I don't know if I qualify, and certainly I'm not really well trained." And he just said in his strong voice, "You qualify. We have determined that, and you will get the best training. However, we only work with individuals who can make important decisions on short notice. You got until noon tomorrow." Now, at this point, I usually get the question, was it dangerous to say, no,
I was about to say that there's only one right answer, right? Because
I know you see, and that's misconception, because I believe it. Wouldn't have been damaged. See, they were looking for people who were truly volunteering. Okay, who really wanted to do that. If I had said no, I don't think that would have been retaliation. Now, if once I was hired and I started training, and I would have, and I determined that's really not for me, that would have been a problem, because I have I have an example where I met a classmate of mine from high school who did the same thing for the Stasi. He was going to be undercover in West Germany. And they made him go to West Berlin to test him if he can handle enemy territory. He peed in his pants and told him, I can't do this. Well, they kicked him out, but they also punished him. He never got a job as an engineer in East Germany. He was an engineer by training. He had a college degree. So I think at that point I was still able to say, not for me. And it was like really a tough decision for me to make because I knew I was going to have a really, really good career at college over there. And I would have, had a good life. And I loved my basketball team. It became my new family because I didn't live with the family anymore. And, they were all my best friends. And it was a tough decision to make. Had I had a steady girlfriend who I loved, I was about to ask.
No. I was about to ask, right? Yeah. Did you have a long-term girlfriend?
Significant other.
Yeah.
Had I had a good relationship, a loving relationship with my mother, I probably would have said no and say, no, I can't leave my mother. But I didn't. So it came down, it was almost 50-50. It came down ultimately to, obviously I had an ideological foundation. Are you familiar with the acronym MICE?
MICE?
Yeah. It's an acronym that's used to indicate the motivation that people might have to join an espionage organization. The M stands for money. There was no money offered. Okay, my first salary was identical to the job that I had at the time as an assistant professor, but there was money lurking in the future because I was going to live in the West, and I knew life there was better, and the standard of living was higher. So there wasn't a little bit. The I stands for ideology. Yes. The C stands for coercion. You don't coerce somebody to do this kind of a job. Then the first chance they get, they will run or turn. And the E is for ego. Bingo. Ego.
Yeah. Do you have a strong?
There is an A. The A is missing because I also was looking forward to the adventure and but the ego. I mean, here was there was a lot of mythology about how good the KGB was. There were nothing but heroes, the same as the Stasi. So they wanted me. That means I must be really good. Yay! And then I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't pick up girls and tell them, oh, by the way, I'm going to be a scout for peace. That's what the East German terminology was. So that didn't help. But still, I grew in stature. I was already up there, all right? I was already full of myself, and that filled me up some more. So eventually I said, okay, let's go. I'm doing it. The United States was still not in the picture.
So you said yes, signed your life away, or probably just said, yes, I'll do it, right? And then what happened? Did you stay in East Germany, or were you sent somewhere else for training?
And by the way, I still didn't quite know what I signed up for. I knew the idea was to be an illegal in West Germany, and all I knew how they operate was from that TV series about this East German James Bond. I had no idea. So even when I moved within a month, I quit the university, and I had to hand in my party document. And the fellow who collected it, he knew that I was going someplace where I couldn't tell him, because that was the rule. I can't take my party document even to East Berlin. So yeah, I came to Berlin, and you think that there was some kind of a structured curriculum for the training. It was all ad hoc. Well, this week we're going to start Morse code. All right, so it took about 2, 3, 4 months until I was able to listen at the speed that eventually would be used while I was active. Oh, and then how about some secret writing? There was always other people that did the training. I also the first document that was given to read was the Constitution of West Germany. The second was mandatory, the history of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. All right. Now, there was another test. I thought I was in. Oh, no. There were 2 tests. One was like the one that my schoolmate, my classmate failed. I had to make a test trip to West Berlin, which I passed with flying colors. But the first test was wicked. Okay? So I'm thinking, I'm meeting my new handler by the name of Leonid. Leonid was a tough guy. He had served in World War II. He was a real tough guy. If there was something that he didn't like, he would get very strong and loud. And, you were worried that he might, punch you a little bit. So I meet the guy in his car, and he says, okay, and he knew me by my cover name, Dieter. Okay, Dieter, I already have a task for you. I says, oh, that's exciting. What is it? Find yourself a place to live. My heart went from here to there. In those days, there was a severe housing shortage in East Germany. All housing was controlled by the government, not necessarily central government, local government. And there were married couples with children who were on a waiting list they still had to wait for like 10 years. There was no way I could find a place to live, right? But I think I'm pretty good at taking bad news, because apparently I didn't make any facial gestures. I didn't say a word. I just took it in. And I wasn't to be defeated that easily, because if I fail, I'm out. Mm-hmm. It was a hard test to figure out whether I can be inventive enough to find a solution. Well, I found one. I took the local train. It was a city train that is like a subway, but it was above ground, to the last stop, to a suburb. And then I was walking around the streets and rang some bells and asked people if they would know a place where I could at least stay at night. I wasn't looking for anything special, because I had spent 5 years in dorms that weren't that luxurious. And one guy said, I think there's this lady that Unter den Linden, that was the street that I remember. She may rent a place that she has. So I ring the bell there, and lo and behold, she has something. And she showed it to me. Well, that was the only choice I had. It was an outbuilding, not a garage. It's sort of a shed made out of bricks. It had one room, two rooms. One small room as you entered that had a coal-burning stove and running cold water. And the main room had a bed and a table, no chair. That was it. Toilet outside. So I took it. And when I met Leonid again, I told him, yeah, I found something, and I didn't say a word what it was like. I didn't complain. Mm-hmm. And I think that gave me a big plus. there's a lot of people who just can't handle this kind of stuff, and there's quite a bit of stoicism in my character. I can just take. I shouldn't say the S word, but you know what I'm talking
I know what
about.
you mean. Yeah, take the bullets, right? Yeah, exactly.
And this is not something you can be proud of, because that's a genetic kind of predisposition. You either are or you aren't. So yeah. And then when I passed the test to go to West Berlin, then I was finally really in. Okay. This is hindsight. A lot of this is hindsight. I was just like doing what I was supposed to do, and I was very trusting in those days. I trusted that they would be nice to me and good to me, and even that test to find my apartment, it didn't occur to me that I was in severe danger, maybe in more danger in my entire career than in any other situation.
Okay, so let's just switch gears. That's a phenomenal story, by the way. Like all
Yeah.
the way up to this point, we're getting up to the piece, but like I'm just blown away. So still doing your training. They're finding out if you can survive by yourself, right? Because I think like they're setting you up for. They haven't told you yet, but they're setting you up for shipping you to the United States, right?
Yeah, no, I was also very good, and
Yeah.
I've been told very good learning the tradecraft. Like,
Tradecraft,
in
right?
those days,
Yeah.
I had a very fast brain. It slowed down significantly, but and I was a learner, and I had good study habits. I was very disciplined, and that impressed them as well. And one day we had a visitor from Moscow. At that point, I already had an apartment, and that's when I was, again, in hindsight, that's when I was really in. And Nikolai and I met in my apartment, and we got somebody from Moscow visiting. We sat down, we talked a little bit, and then he asked us, "How's your English?" So I pulled a book out of a bookshelf, and it was a novel, and I showed it to him and said, "I can read that without the help of a dictionary." "Oh, really? That's interesting." So a week later, I had a tape recorder, and they asked me to say something in English, 20 minutes, whatever you want to talk about. And apparently they were now looking for not the Arnold Schwarzenegger accent, but something that's something that sounds like it may actually, with some work, may be improved to a point. Just maybe we found somebody who can be infiltrated in the U.S. as a born American. Now, once they heard the tape, within a couple of days, I was on my first flight ever to Moscow. And again, I just played along.
Yeah.
You told me what to do, I did it. So I showed up there, and I was introduced to two ladies. One was a professor of English at Moscow University. That was obviously her official job. She was KGB. They wouldn't have somebody who's not KGB do that kind of job that she did. And the other one was a born American. So we spent some time, maybe a half hour in a room. We talked about, I was very fluent at that point. I had a couple of tutors with whom I did nothing but talk. Okay, so I practiced speaking rather than just, having the ability to read and understand. So that was, and again, that was my idea. I wasn't told to do that, but I knew I had, if I wanted to be really good at, and I was always ambitious, I wanted to be as good as possible. And so I was very fluent already in conversational English. And then the ladies withdrew, and apparently then they were asked the question as to whether I had a chance to speak the way I'm speaking today, which is, I know I have an accent, but it's minor. And if you're talking about sending me to New York City, Nobody cares. New York City is polyglot, and there's all kinds of accents, and there's all kinds of people who were born in the U.S. and have an accent, particularly Puerto Ricans. Offsprings of Puerto Rican families that were born in Spanish Harlem, and they spoke. When I met them, they spoke with a pretty strong accent. So anyway, the Russian was she had her doubts. I don't know, this, he would have to learn a whole lot of things, also how to act like an American and be a little more self-confident and blah blah blah. And the American chimed in. And she said, "No, I can teach him." So wishful thinking, and the American won. They figured, let's give it a try because, somebody like me was a rarity. Just to get me into the United States, not even to a second country. Like, I met a colleague of mine who also was illegal in the United States, but he went through Brazil. Brazil was one of the favorite countries. It was very easy to get citizenship there. And then you legally emigrate. But that means there's a flag that you came from another country. I was born in New Jersey, right? And that's the crown jewel of agency, period. You can't get any better than that. And the reason that they were so interested in us illegals in the 80s was because during World War II and the beginning stages of the Cold War, the most success they had with ex-communists. So they were born in the U.S. They had access to whatever, and they were hard to discover. And then when the Communist Party was prohibited and communism was pretty much done with in the U.S., they needed a replacement, and somebody like me was as good as it gets, if not perfect, because it took me quite a while to learn behaviors of Americans, because that they didn't teach me in Moscow.
So I just find it crazy. So you've got someone verifying that you can speak English.
Yeah.
And then you've got an American who's obviously turned, right? Or what's the defect?
Yeah, no,
whatever, right?
I tell you what happened with her. The FBI actually knows about her. When we were done with the debriefing,
right?
It was not an interrogation. I was being it was a very friendly
chat.
Very detailed debriefing. The agent showed me a picture. He probably wasn't supposed to. And I say, yeah, that's her. She had fallen in love with a KGB agent and followed him into Russia.
Right. Okay.
And I guarantee you she regretted this to her dying day, because she was just a miserable, negative individual who just she couldn't speak Russian. She didn't integrate well in society. She was isolated. Okay, she had a husband still, and I think she had a daughter, but that wasn't the life. I mean, so anyway, she spent 2 years. I was in her apartment twice every week for about an hour and a half for 2 years, and we did a lot of conversation. She tried to teach me a little something about what America is like, but her knowledge was dated. You know, she couldn't talk about baseball or football or any of the things that as a red-blooded American is just crazy about, right? So I had a lot to learn when I came to the U.S.
So I'll let Derek direct the next couple of questions, but I just want to tee it up for him. So you get to the end of your training. You've obviously got your birth name, right, from East Germany, and then they give you a sort of code name for your training.
From day one, when Herman gave me a code name.
Yeah, and then they say, right, we're going to send you to the United States with this mission. Here's your cover name. And is that the cover name that you've got today, right? Is that Jack Barsky?
Yeah, it's Jack Barsky.
And where did that name come from?
I have a picture that would explain it. I am in that picture. This was done 3 months ago. I'm standing next to the tombstone of the original Jack Barsky. Passed away at the age of 11.
Right. Okay.
And the United States was so vulnerable to penetration that way. This tombstone is in Maryland, and so one of those diplomat spies.
I was about to say CIA, right? Yeah, Maryland.
At the Soviet embassy was wandering around in graveyards to look for just that, and he was able to. It was for the asking and a small fee. He got the death certificate, and using that death certificate, he actually was able to get a certified copy of the birth certificate. Unbelievable. The United States has been and still is vulnerable to penetration. It's different these days, but we are just one of the most naive nations.
Well,
so much to keep going right there.
Don't say that. They're protecting us all. Don't say that.
What?
Well, they look after everybody, right?
It doesn't mean everybody is naive. I thought I'd turn this thing off.
So maybe talk about how he got into the United States, the route he got in. Maybe that's probably a nice next step.
So, it took 2 years of training until they finally decided I was ready, and they had the birth certificate. The first, I had a test trip to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And there I was supposed to get the birth certificate of one Henry Van Randall. And that county where Van Randall was born and died actually did something unusual in those days. They cross-referenced the death records with the birth records. So I got in the mail, to Canada, I got a birth certificate that was in big red letters stamped across, deceased. So now that put me in quite a bit of danger. Here was a dead person who was asking for his own birth certificate, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So the KGB, the FBI eventually was informed, but I was on the run. I traveled through a number of cities in Canada before I went back to Russia. So, yeah, and so anyway, when that failed, they told me to go back to Berlin and study Portuguese. You know now why. And then this one guy found the Jack Barsky birth certificate, and now you can go directly to the U.S. And at that point, my training was finished.
Okay, Derek, do you want to ask him about how his life started in the United States? Basically?
Well, yeah. So I would assume. So we're talking what, late 70s at this point, right?
I came to the U.S. on the day before Columbus Day in 1978.
Okay. So likely route would have been through Mexico?
No.
Okay.
That's another tale. I'm going to make it short. There was a trip that went from Belgrade to Vienna to Rome to Madrid to Mexico City, and I finally entered the U.S. in Chicago. There was a good reason for that kind of, and there were 3 false passports involved.
Mm-hmm.
There was a good reason to smuggle me in that way. There was no way to trace me, not a hint to trace me back to Moscow. So they did some things really well, but a lot of things screwed up. And I can spend the rest of the talk here about all the screw ups, but you are in charge.
No, it's fine. All right. So you come in, you arrive in Chicago. I mean, what was step one, right? I would assume.
Well, step one, I entered Chicago with the false Canadian passport. Mm-hmm. Step one was to kill that Canadian. So, step 0 was to find a hotel room. It was already dark, and so I found a hotel room. And the first thing I did was go to the bathroom, lock the bathroom, and try to light the thing on fire. Damn thing didn't burn.
Oof.
It created a lot of black smoke, and as I'm looking up the ceiling, there's a smoke detector right above where I was.
Yeah.
If that thing goes off, I'm toast.
Yeah.
All right. I had the presence of mind to throw the passport in the toilet, and the smoke detector didn't go off. So now I had this birth certificate in a secret compartment. I pulled it out and made my way to another hotel and checked in as Jack Barsky. Those days you didn't have to show ID.
Yeah.
You could get a plane without showing ID. It was interesting times. And then the task, once I wound up in New York, that was my destination. The primary task was to acquire documentation that made me functional as a real American, particularly a driver's license, social security card.
Okay.
That in and of itself is a tale of very bad instructions. Everything that they told me, the way I should do it, didn't work. But again, they picked the right guy. I found a way around, and eventually got both documents. And I was able, and also the kind of jobs that they suggested were like, that wouldn't work. Like, is that word stevedore still used these days?
Which word?
Stevedore. These are workers that load and unload ships. Okay. Anyway.
Not ringing a bell.
Maybe this is from my very early days of learning English, and it's really dated English. It doesn't matter. That's why I asked. I had so I did a little bit of studying. I didn't even try to apply because I found out these were highly paid jobs, and you had to be a union member, or you had to be become a union member. No, or taxi driver. No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
You work your ass off, and you don't make any money. So eventually, I sort of compromised with myself. I had to get some job which wouldn't pay enough, so the KGB would still have to give me money to pay for the hotel room. That was $500 a month, which is pretty costly.
That's pretty good.
This is more than what I pay in rent right now in today's dollars. It was New York. So I decided I got to go for a job where the chances are very high and nobody will ask me for a resume. And I applied for a messenger job. And so I knew that messengers in those days, I think the minimum wage was $2.50 an hour. But as luck would have it, as I'm asking that dispatcher in the main office for a job, he looked at me, and apparently I made an impression that I have maybe a little more than your average messenger with me. He asked me, "Can you ride a bike?" I said, "Yeah." In East Germany, we rode a bike to school. That was
every day.
The transportation.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, so get yourself a messenger bag and show up with a bike tomorrow." And he sent me to a branch office after explaining to me that I was going to be on commission.
Geez.
And well, that was a find because commission was half of what the company charged the customer. So the first month I made $300. The first week I made $300.
Oh, nice.
Okay, yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah, that worked out real well.
That was enough money for me within a couple of months to get my own apartment, pay for the rent, and actually go hang out at bars. And I made a living. It was high risk, but by now I wasn't shying away from that risk. I had one accident where I busted my right shoulder, and I escaped near death one time. I don't want to get into detail. I'm not exaggerating. But other than that, I did this for 3.5 years in heavy New York traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was one of the very best, and I tell you why. When you, it's not just riding a bike. First of all, you need to know where to ride the bike. And it needs to be in the middle of a multi-lane road, because if you're left and right, every other block, there's somebody turning into you, and that slows you down. You don't ride on the sidewalk. You don't ride against traffic. But I think where I really did well, I'm very good at looking for patterns and recognizing patterns. Crosstown in Manhattan can be really slow. Every block you hit a red light. Well, I figured out some streets crosstown where the lights change just to be in sync with my speed. So I would be, and also there were some buildings that had very slow elevators. But the Flatiron Building? You familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
The
the
skyscraper in Manhattan. Yeah, it looked like an iron. And I don't know if they have another elevator. In those days, it had one really slow elevator that could have set me back, 20 minutes, because if it makes too many stops, blah, blah, blah. So what I did, if I had a package to, say, the 9th floor, and I waited until I was alone in that place, and I sent the elevator to the very top. Then I pushed the down button and got rid of my package real quick. And when I went back to where the elevator was, the doors opened automatically in front of me. So, I don't think they had really, really smart bike messengers. So anyway, and then I entered college and eventually became a professional.
And
So, go on, Derek.
and just for our audience, what did you start studying in college?
Yeah, I have a degree in the business degree, Bachelor of Business Administration, and I chose as my concentration information management. So I actually became a computer programmer, and I loved that. That was the beginning of me liking where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly.
Yeah. I just want to set this up. So, grew up in the East, became a KGB agent, went through all the training. You moved to the West. We'll talk about what your mission is, right, in the West, why you were sent there.
Yeah, you're going to be surprised when I explain that to you.
And then you're like, do you know what? I'm going to go to college, and it was tech, right? But it's the early days of tech, right? It's become the
very
profession.
early.
So you've got KGB agent turns programmer, right? It's just... It's
and in those days, the
what a
KGB
contrast.
didn't have a clue how important technology was going to be. In my 8th year, they finally suggested that I poke around on the internet to see if there's any value in the internet with regard to espionage. Yeah, very much behind. Very much behind. It's a peasant mentality that still rules in Russia. It's in the national DNA, So, and I love programming, and they paid well. I'm creative by nature, and I'd like to create something that brings the machine to life. It was really very fulfilling. And at one point, there were really, really good colleagues, and they were from like 5-6 different countries: Chinese, Russian, Ukrainian, Cuban. And at one point, I was thinking, I'm going to miss these guys. That was really a sign. I wasn't aware of it, but it was a sign that I had begun to soften. Okay. And I had pretty good, by comparison, that my lifestyle had really improved compared to what I had in East Germany.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Go on, Derek.
No, just say we're now in love with computer programming, but you have to focus on what you were sent here to do. And so, what was that specifically as you were trying to?
Now, okay, I set you up before. I told you that they didn't tell me everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I found out many years later, and again, it was through one of those interviews that a retired KGB higher-up gave, that the most important thing for me being an illegal in the United States was me being in the United States. Now, in hindsight, I can reconstruct that thinking. They didn't tell me. They didn't prepare me. Here's the thing. There was a good chance. There was a lot of espionage war going on. There was a good chance that diplomatic relations might be between the Soviet Union and the U.S. might be broken up completely.
Mm-hmm.
And guess who they would have left behind enemy lines? Us, the illegals, me and however many colleagues I had. They, based on what Mitrokin smuggled out of the archives, they trained and possibly sent 10 of us, no more. So now you connect the dots. Here's another important dot. In those days, the most valuable information that the KGB got out of the United States was delivered by moles. Aldrich Ames, CIA,
Yep.
Yeah.
and Robert Hansen, FBI.
Yep.
And they interacted with the diplomats. Pretty dangerous, by the way, but they had nobody else. They didn't want to. At one point, they thought they want to give Ames to me, but they didn't mention any name. But I, again, reconstructed that. But the only ones left to possibly interact with them would be us illegals. So we were the insurance policy. Now, the official tasks that they gave me were like I was trained to be sort of a roving analyst with regard to foreign policy, and they asked me to make contacts with people who who are active formulating foreign policy or at least influencing them. I failed miserably with that because I really didn't have the standing in society. I didn't have a good reason to try to befriend them. Hang out where the State Department is, and it would have been dangerous, if I go to a bar and start talking. So they would have sensed something is not right. So that didn't work. Where I had some success, but it was never confirmed. But there's a possibility of success. The other thing they told me, just get to know as many people as you can, and always study them and see if they are worth recruiting. Have access to secrets. B, may have access to secrets, particularly students who might wind up in companies or in the government where they could be very helpful. And then C, there has to be sort of a hook how to approach them, according to that MICE acronym. Mm-hmm. So I did profile maybe at least a dozen, possibly more, but they would never tell me what they did with that information. And there's one thing, that was during my last 2 years, they also asked me to see if I could acquire some technology that was on the do not export list, information technology, hardware, software. Mm-hmm. And I was an employee of MetLife at the time. I managed to steal the source code and that was in assembler, for a highly popular program that is still used today to manage sort of an ERP, you know what that is, enterprise.
Relationship management.
It wasn't one of the first ERPs. It wouldn't work in a communist society, but I didn't know. I didn't think about this, so whatever. I I thought, I had done a good job. That's it. No more. So again, uh, me just being in the U.S. that long without being discovered was considered a big success. One other thing I forgot to mention. There was an operation. Again, they didn't tell me that there was an operation, but they did tell me that every KGB agent who operated in another country was assigned a military object to occasionally take a look at to see if there's a preparation for war.
Mm-hmm.
There's a naval weapons station in New Jersey called Earl, and that was assigned to me. The operation was called Ryan, and it came directly from the top of the KGB. I had a little training to look at silhouettes of ships to determine what kind of a ship I'm looking at. Never saw anything. The U.S. did not actively prepare for war, so maybe that information was good enough for them. Because otherwise you're in the dark. You never know, because they were deathly afraid of Ronald Reagan.
I was just about to say, right? Is it early 80s? You have to check my history.
Mid 80s.
Mid 80s, still Reagan.
And he turns up the rhetoric, right, of putting pressure on the Cold War, right, to basically bankrupt the Soviet Union, right, or whatever.
Well, and there's a lot. There's another element of ignorance here, because Ronald Reagan occasionally quoted from the Bible, and the book of Revelation is about the end of the world, and they literally thought that Ronald Reagan might actually want to help God to end the world. Yeah, I heard them not say what I just tell you, but you could infer from the ways they talked about Reagan that they were afraid of him.
He did what he said, right? Kind of thing. Yeah. They were constantly watching US presidents, right, to see if they would follow through with approaches and everything, right? And Ronald Reagan was quite, if I'm saying I'm going to do it, right? Or the way he reacted to things, right? So, okay. So you had a messenger job. You went to college, learned to do programming. Then you got a job in IT, right? Tech, did you say?
Programming is IT. I did 10 years hands-on, and then what happened was, in those days there was a glass ceiling. You couldn't make more money than your dumb boss. So at that point,
still around a little bit, right?
Yeah, and at that point, I had a family. I had a wife and my daughter. And
settled in, right?
My focus was now on taking good care of these two ladies, and so I had to take the management job. Mm-hmm. Most of it was pretty boring, but I wound up being very good at crisis management. I fixed altogether 5 different IT organizations in different companies.
I'm not surprised. With all the pressure that you'd been under, right up to that point.
Well, and at that point, I also had acquired quite a few people skills and understanding of people, because I was observing people all the time. That was part of what I had to do. It was a survival skill, right?
Right. So you got into leadership, and then you were settling down into. You basically built a life around you. You had friends, right? You had a career.
Yes.
You had wife and kids, right? When did it hit you in the head that basically I'm not going to say your ideology changed, but your approach became about your family?
The ideology changed dramatically when the Berlin Wall came down.
And so when did you go, right, I'm going to leave the KGB, or I'm going to I want to stay here, or...
Okay, now I left the KGB a year before the wall came down.
Right, okay. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
I had no idea that this would happen. And so you can't say, well, he stayed here because, it was all messed up. No, I stayed because I had had fathered a child with my wife, who was an illegal at one point and came from Guyana and decided to stay and was looking to get married to somebody. And she asked me, and I figured, yeah, I could do that. I had enough. I had the birth certificate and the driver's license. That's all we needed. But she made a decision that she didn't discuss with me. I told her I would marry her, but I'm not the marrying kind. Once she has a green card, we get divorced again. Okay. Well,
Right.
she put a monkey wrench into the works by getting pregnant.
Right. Okay.
Now, this is cultural ignorance. This is very typical for ladies who have come to the United States. They get married, and then to hold on to the man, they get a child. And she was lucky enough that it was a girl, because I've always loved girls. I thought they were when I grew up, I thought they were better human beings. They were prettier, and they were clean. They couldn't do anything bad. It was just my romantic notion. I don't know. There's a lot of romanticism in the German soul. So I just I watched her grow up from day one. I took her out of the hospital once she was out of the incubator. She was for 1 week she was in an incubator, and I watched this baby grow up. And even today, when I say little young girls, babies, and older, it's just my heart skips a beat. I just love them. And this one was so pretty. She's still gorgeous today. And she was loving on me. She couldn't talk yet, but with her eyes, she had them big, very big eyes. And I wasn't aware of it, but I had a massive attack of unconditional love. And when it happened that the KGB said to me, they didn't say it, there was a signal on a support beam of the subway at the train station that I took every day to work. It was a fist-sized red dot, and that meant get out of the country because you're in severe danger. That was the danger signal. And I wasn't ready to leave. I hadn't figured out how to support this kid because our mom had only 4 years of schooling. Chelsea would have grown up in abject poverty with that woman as a mother. She wasn't a bad person, but she just couldn't possibly earn a decent living where they could live in normal circumstances. So again, very similar to when I had to make a decision to join up with the KGB. Now I had to make a decision to disobey and risk that they were right, that I was about to be arrested, because that's what they actually explained to me in a radiogram, and the encrypted Morse code. We have reason to believe that the FBI is going to arrest you soon. Somebody whispered something into their ears, and they were very paranoid about this kind of stuff. And I went back and forth, and ultimately it doesn't matter. Quite frankly, and that's, again, I don't have to make this up. Everything that I knew that was good for me was behind the Iron Curtain. I had a couple of $100,000 that was saved on my behalf because I got a salary that they didn't have to give to me because I made enough money to stay in the U.S. They promised me a house. I had received the second highest decoration of the Soviet Union 2 years before. That's the Order of the Red Banner, which had to be
That's
approved. Had to be approved by the Presidium of the Supreme Council. That's the highest level of government. You don't get something from them unless somebody made a really good case. So I would have gone back to a hero's welcome, and then there was this girl.
GPS signal lost.
Yeah, I keep on forgetting. Sorry about this.
It's okay.
It's all right.
I need to actually confirm that it's off. And while I'm talking, come on, some power off. Oh, I need to put a pin in. So, okay, sorry. But I know you can edit that out.
Yes, we can.
So this was not a rational decision. That decision was made by my subconscious. It's just like it was a gut-based decision. It was based on love, and that's feelings. Okay?
Yeah.
That trumped everything else. And
we
it
get
worked.
it. We get it. Trust me. We get it, right?
Do you have kids?
Oh, yeah. I've got a daughter.
3.
He's got,
3 girls
Yeah.
too?
2 girls, 1 boy.
So you know what I'm talking about. Oh, and I am so happy that it worked out that way, because Chelsea is a wonderful adult. She played Division I basketball. I'm very proud of her. None of that would have happened if I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not rational thinking. That was just right here. I love you so much. I mean, that is stronger than the, the mixed love that includes sex, love for a woman. It's stronger in my estimation.
So, did you just start ignoring the KGB? Like, how would you?
No,
I'm trying to think. How'd you quit, right? Or
that was a brainstorm and people always tell me that was a brilliant lie. Yeah, it was the second best lie that I ever committed. The best one was impersonating an American, right?
Yeah.
But this one, it just popped into my subconscious. Oh man, how about if I'm dying from AIDS? HIV, AIDS.
Yeah.
Right, that would have worked at that time period, right? That would have.
Mm-hmm.
And it was triggered by a conversation I had in Moscow, where the AIDS epidemic went rampant, particularly among homosexuals, and the thought was that them stupid capitalists are getting their comeuppance because their lifestyle just like so we got to make sure that we don't let anybody in this country with this kind of a disease because it's highly infectious. So I wrote my goodbye letter in secret writing, said, darn, I wish I could come back, but I don't want to bring HIV AIDS into the country. That worked. They told my German wife, as you may know, I was also married in Germany to a woman I loved more than the mother of Chelsea. That was another reason to go back. But anyway, they told my German wife that I had passed away from AIDS, and gave her part of the money that was saved on my account, and the Order of the Red Banner. So I died in good standing. And in Germany now, where they keep the records, mm-hmm. There's an entry that says Albrecht Dittrich, my German name, passed away in 1988.
Oh, it's still there today?
Yep.
Wow.
Well, they keep them. Germans keep stuff for a long time.
No, I get that, but I mean, given everything that's happened post since.
Yeah. Whatever. These are not Stasi documents. They're like the Bureau of Vital Statistics, something like that. And the German version, I don't know Standesamt. They call it Standesamt. Where you have marriages, births, and deaths.
Oh. Is everyone still there? I think we've lost it. Derek.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look frozen on the screen, so I do apologize.
No, we're not frozen.
Right. Okay. So you tell the KGB that you got HIV. They basically tie up your affairs. in the East, right?
Yep.
With your family back home and everything else. So you're living your life. You've got your new wife. You got your daughter, etc. When did the feds come into? Did your wife know that you were a secret agent? The wife that you had in the
Yeah,
US?
at one point, I disclosed that to her. We had an argument that I know exactly where we were in the kitchen. It was over nothing. She was just like quite cantankerous, and I'm argumentative, so we were arguing back and forth. And at one point, I figured to use the nuclear option, and I said, "Listen, whatever you don't like, and however you think I don't relate to you, I'm going to share something with you." And I showed her. I shared with her my past, that I was once a Russian agent, and I stayed in the country risking life and or jail to stay with her and our daughter. Well, that backfired in two ways. First of all, she was not very trusting, so now she knew I had a past as a spy. Now that made her distrust me severely. But two, at that point, the FBI was already investigating me, and they had a listening device in my kitchen. So while I was, they had my confession on tape.
We've got you, right?
Yep.
Kind of thing.
And there were people listening in an office. They were listening, and imagine, you're the agent who's listening and said, "Oh my God, guess what I just heard?
We've got what we need," right?
Yeah, this is eventually when they decided to introduce themselves. They did investigate me for 2 years because there were still moles in the U.S. government, and they weren't sure whether I was running one of those.
Right. Okay.
So they were very careful to just not get too close, because that one thing they knew, I was a very, very well-trained agent, because at the time I was in my 19th year in the U.S. undetected. Only detected because of Mitrokin. So
how did they, I'm going to say, introduce themselves? Is that the best? I don't know the best.
Yeah,
way,
they did
introduce.
This is the word I use. So no, I at the time I had a house in a very rural section of eastern Pennsylvania, and I had about a 45-mile commute into Newark, New Jersey, where I worked for Prudential. It was a Friday afternoon. I left a little early to beat traffic, and I had to cross the Delaware River to get into Pennsylvania. And there was a toll crossing, a toll bridge. And so that's where you have to slow down. There was no automatic detection of license plates. You had to put coins in, or tokens. So I think it was 2 quarters. So I'm slowing down, and I'm putting my quarters in, and there appears a state trooper, and he just waves me over. And he waves over and tells me to stop, and I roll down the window. I say, "Yes, officer." "Oh, this is just a routine traffic stop. Would you please step out of the car?" At that point, I wasn't sharp anymore. I should have immediately noticed that was not a routine traffic stop. They don't make you step out of the car.
No.
So I step out. I don't know why they did it that way, but I should have asked my friend who was the agent, the lead agent on that case. He came from my right, and I just saw him okay. Still didn't have a clue what that meant, but when he flipped open his ID, I didn't have to look at it. I knew the gig was up right then and there. And Joe Riley, that's his name. As I said, he became a really good friend. He told me later that my face went totally white. I had
the gigs up, right?
The gigs
I was a middle class family man at the time. A United States citizen. I was at least intellectually and emotionally pretty much American. I had forgotten that I once was a spy. I had forgotten that that I had German children. All of this, and all of a sudden, that past is coming right back, and it's coming back with an implied threat.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to expect. They told me, step in the vehicle, please, and they played around with some props. The partner of the lead agent who was driving, I was to sit in the back seat, and the partner was sitting next to me, and he had the gun on his ankle, and it was visible. So there was a message, I can shoot if I have to.
What did they say to you? What?
Well, I actually asked the first question.
Mm-hmm.
I asked, "Am I under arrest?" And Joe turned around. He said, "No, and this may not be the worst day of your life." So that raised my hope. I figured there's a chance. So, and immediately my subconscious went to work again, and it told me, you need to make them like you. So, and I have a tendency to make stupid jokes. So I asked him, so what took you so long? And I saw a touch of a smile. So that was the beginning of, if you like somebody, you treat them better than if you don't like them.
That's true, right?
That's very true.
And subconsciously, I knew that, and they drove me to a motel where they just by the Delaware Water Gap, and it was an L-shaped motel, and they had rented all the rooms in one of the wings. And I walk in there, I passed by a person who covered that entrance with a machine gun over his shoulders. So they were serious. They didn't know what to expect, right? And then we entered the room, and there were some props, some other props, some big signs. One of them was had my cover name on it. Another one had an address where I sent early on letters in secret writing. I think it was in Austria. And as I'm looking at these props, I still had the presence of mind to analyze things. I realized that they didn't know much about me simply because all these props were from my early phase in the United States, right? So instinctively, I knew that I had a lot of value that I could share and exchange for leniency, whatever that meant. So I just opened up right away. I said, gentlemen, I know that the only way for me, and most importantly, my family, to come away from the situation with the least amount of damage is if I share everything that I know, and I am absolutely 100% prepared to do so. And so it became a rather polite conversation. And the end of that conversation was not so polite. They told me to call my wife and tell her that I'm late because of whatever traffic situation. They said, we will let you go home now. But the guy who ran the outfit that, with the soldiers or the policeman with the machine gun and the surveillance group, the head of the surveillance group, he looked at me very, very sternly and said, and if you think you can run, don't even try. We got every intersection covered. He didn't have to say that, and I didn't know where to run to. But anyway, and then we spent like 6 weeks debriefing. Joe wanted to know every little thing about my life that includes childhood and everything like what you just asked, some of the questions, but in much more detail and probing and so forth. Because one of the things that they wanted to puzzle together is, what made the KGB recruit me? Because I found out that the CIA is looking for very similar talents and skills. I have a friend who recruited a lot of folks for the CIA, and said, "Wow, this is like maybe the there was an exchange of ideas between the two organizations. But anyway, and to finish this phase of my life, I had to pass a lie detector test. The FBI is still very they rely a lot on lie detector tests, even though there are some psychopaths and maybe some other talented people who can fool a lie detector test, but most didn't, and I didn't want to. I didn't have to. So, and then I was told there's a path to citizenship over time. I got my green card first, and then it took another number of years to get my citizenship, which happened 9 years ago. And as soon as I got that, I applied for a passport and made a trip, a Rip Van Winkle trip back into my past, and that was interesting too.
So yeah, I mean, so did you go back to Germany? Basically,
I did.
Once you got your passport, how did that feel after so long? Right, obviously, the world's changed, right?
Yeah, it felt weird. I said Rip Van Winkle because, first of all, the town where I studied got really pretty because they painted all the buildings. You know, East Germany was known to be mostly gray and brown.
Yeah.
Obviously the people that are walking around in what used to be German Democratic Republic they were all well dressed. They were like me, you know, like an American standard of living was higher. And what I found out that I really don't like Germans anymore. At least where I grew up, the Germans have a very impolite way of communicating. I don't know if it applies to all Germans, but my ex classmates and friends that I spoke with, you know, when they will tell you what they don't like about you, whether you ask for it or not, and then they will go get close to you, where you know we have this distance thing going. We can't have people in our face too close. The Germans don't know what that distance is. For them, it's a lot smaller. And you're just very argumentative. And the other thing is I didn't like it, the militaristic discipline and still looking for the government. And we have that happening in our country nowadays to solve all their problems. You know, that's a heritage of communism because the government just pretty much treated you like vassals that, you know, occasionally get something good if the government is so inclined. So I did not like that part. It was just eye-opening. I also didn't know how to go. Once I had to get gas, and I didn't know how to operate the machinery in Germany. Mm-hmm. It's different. You know, you can't use a credit card, and there was no. So I go inside to the office, and I ask her in accent-free German, "How does this work?" And she looked at me like, "You're kidding me, right?" I said, no, and I gave her a little bit of a background, and then she explained to me. But there was a movie moment that you can't make it up. And this, if there ever is a movie about my life, and there is some chance there will be, that will be one of those wonderful moments. So I sit in my son's apartment, and I pulled out a piece of paper, and then there was a list of ex-classmates that another classmate shared with me a couple of days before. And I see the name of the girlfriend who I was crazy in love with and who I was going to marry, with name and a phone number, and she dumped me. I mean, if she didn't dump me, I probably wouldn't be talking to you today. I was like head over heels in love. And so I said to Matthias, my son, I said, should I call her? He said, yeah, do it. So I called her. She says hello and says, are you obviously in German? Are you sitting comfortably? Just hold on to your chair. Guess who this is? So who? It's Albrecht. And this is what I heard. They all knew that I had passed away in a rocket accident in Kazakhstan, because my cover was that I was going to be doing I was going to do a space exploration in a super secret facility in Kazakhstan.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to meet. We met I was sitting on a park bench, and she came. See, the German just crept into my language. Bank is German. So, and she came up to me, and we faced each other, we hugged each other, sat down, and then she made a confession I didn't want, I didn't expect. She said, "You know what? I made a really bad mistake." And then tears ran down her cheeks.
Oh.
Now, is that a movie scene? Is this like two older people where the one that broke up the relationship is crying and sad that she broke it up? Now, eventually, this is the comical aspect of that story. I realized why she thought she made a mistake. I met her husband.
All right.
Not quite.
Short, unimpressive, not as bright. And then, she instinctively, she was a pretty bright person. She instinctively knew that I really did something big, right?
Mm-hmm.
I came back to Germany after so many years. At that point, I may have, I don't know if I told her, but she knew I came back from somewhere. And I must have been really something special, even if it was just Kazakhstan, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was one of the most dangerous thing or risky thing you did for the KGB?
I already told you. I already told you that was finding my apartment. But now, in the United States, the things that could have hurt me the most were my own mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a chance that I was going to be the intermediary between the KGB and Aldrich Ames. That would have been quite dangerous.
Yeah, that would have been right.
I also had a task to look for a person who had who deserted and was under a death sentence. And I found him, but he couldn't have known who I was, so that wasn't really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the bicycle job was quite dangerous, but literally, there was the sense of danger when they told me that the FBI was about to arrest me, and when I told them I'm not coming,
mm-hmm.
because there was an implicit threat. So when I played for time, and I because I hadn't made my decision yet, and I acted as if I hadn't received the radio transmission. I was supposed to make a signal someplace to say that I heard it. And so they didn't know what to make of it. So they sent one of their agents to briefly contact me, and he approached me on a subway platform and just said the following words: "You got to come home or else you're dead." Now, there was a chance that if they didn't believe my lie, the AIDS lie, that they would interpret this possibly as defection. And that I knew that they did not treat defectors with kid gloves. So mm-hmm. there was for a while, there was this, thought that they might actually do harm to me. So what I did for about 3 months, I made sure that I was never reliably at the same spot at the same time. That's all I could do because I couldn't run. I had a family. If I run, then I betray the reason why
You
I
stayed.
stayed,
Yeah.
right? But I had flexible work hours, and I always chose a different path to work, and I changed the hours. That's all I could do. And after 3 months, I knew I was in the clear.
Mhm.
I also did. Let me see. No, that doesn't work. Yeah, I wrote a letter to myself to make sure that the FBI doesn't open my letters. There's a way of knowing that when you leave part of the envelope, you don't moisturize it, and there's a spot that because the letters are opened by machine and then closed again and fully closed, and then people don't look at it with their eyes. So if that spot is still there, you know that nobody has read your letter. So that was a defensive measure, and for the I don't know if it would have helped me any with the FBI, but at least I figured I had to do something.
Yeah.
But my life was never really in danger except for this one accident where I hit the pavement and I had a bus to my left and a big truck to my right, and I managed to go straight down. If I had gone to the left or the right, I wouldn't be talking to you today. So yeah, and I got lucky in many respects. I was pretty good, but I also got lucky.
I mean, it's hard to summarize all the different things that you've experienced and that you've been through. And I think you hit it on the head perfectly. Like, there is a lot of luck involved. Yes, good decisions, accidental good decisions, but
Yep,
luck's a big part of it. Always.
absolutely. Yeah, no doubt in my mind.
Well, Jack, just want to find out what you're up to today, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And
So my at this point, I have to make some money because they're not paying my pension, and Social Security is not enough. I'm not on a company pension. I didn't have longevity enough. I switched companies a lot. So the primary way to make money these days is by giving public talks. Interestingly enough, on Friday, I gave a talk at a Masonic temple in Chicago. My God, was that a good audience. They're a bunch of really smart people.
Yeah.
They ask very good questions. And they were just absolutely, they loved on me. And they paid me well. Okay. So I have 5 different presentations that I can deliver these days, different topics. One is just my story if you want to hear it. So what we did just now, and it could be Q&A or me just talking about it. I use a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of media like pictures and music and videos. The second one is like a little bit of a hybrid where I talk about the history of the KGB, the history of the Soviet Union shortly, and then I throw in some characteristic of Vladimir Putin, and then I give some ideas what it was like to be an agent. Like, for instance, I'm getting into detail about the trip from Moscow to New York. That's the second one. And the third one is called An Undercover Love Story, which is about the role of love in the life of an ex-spy. That works well with women, of course, but some men. Then at the Masons, I was asked to talk about the espionage, myths and reality. That's brand new. That I just came up with that one. that did really well, and I was surprised how many really smart, knowledgeable people have fallen for all of these myths that are out there. Most of them generated by the entertainment industry, but some like cropped up out of nowhere. Somebody started it, and then it took on a life of its own. So that was good. And there's one where I do quite a bit about cybersecurity and the insider threat. Sometimes I just tag it on to another presentation because, I was the ultimate insider and I have a lot of contacts that are still active in cyber. Because I spent time in IT, I had those types of people, security people, reporting to me. I'm still well networked in that community. And I forgot number 5, but and I also give I became a Christian, and I give my testimony in churches or at Christian events. I'm going to be in June. I'm going to be talking at a Christian church that is inside an Indian reservation in Canada.
Interesting.
My life.
Where's that? Where's that going to be, Jack?
It's way north. I think I have to fly into Montreal and then take a plane to
Puddle jumper.
Yeah. I don't have the exact itinerary yet, but just to sum it up, my life is more interesting than at any other phase in my life before, and that's because, and I like to say that because I get to do creative things, and I don't have a boss above me that's not very bright. I'm in charge of my own life, which sometimes is a challenge. But I also get to meet interesting people. You're among them, and the reason I get to meet interesting people because my past is a key that opens doors that I previously didn't even know exist. Right? And I have friends like I could start now bragging about them. I'm going to start not do it, but that are from all walks of life. And some of them are well known. I'm still trying to get close to Elon Musk. I live in Austin, but there's some chance. You never know.
No, I think you could give him some tips on insider risk at X or Tesla.
Yeah, it depends. If he has an interest in espionage, I'm a unicorn. There's nobody else like me out there.
Yeah,
it's true.
No,
it's true.
So it's interesting, and I'm gonna be traveling again to get up really early. I'm gonna be in North Carolina, Wilmington.
Oh, I love Wilmington.
Okay, I have not been to Wilmington.
My wife and I used to travel there. She loved the area because of the show One Tree Hill, and so that American sitcom was filmed there, along with a whole host of other media and entertainment. It used to be house to huge movie studios. They actually packed up and moved to Georgia back in like 2016 or something like that.
Yeah, no, Georgia became the second Hollywood.
Exactly. Yeah. So it used to be Wilmington, and then now became Georgia. But yeah, love the town, the Riverwalk, the battleship. North Carolina is right there in the Cape Fear River Basin. It's beautiful. You'll love it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so.
All right, Jack.
Now I got to get ready for that trip. Got to do a little packing, do a little running, because when I'm traveling, I really don't have the time to go for a run.
No, that's good. I believe it. Well, appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your stories, your insight, and everything in and around the world of espionage and KGB. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be a guest on our show. And hopefully,
I got to tell you, you did the same thing that every other interviewer did.
What?
You went a little over. Some of them went over a lot more. And if they don't go over, they said, I wish I had more time. and we have
That's basically what we're thinking right now. Is that we've only just got the tip.
I'm the kind of interviewee who volunteers information that's like hanging on to the answers that I gave to questions, and there's on and on and on, and there's nothing but short circuits. When people that read my book tell me it reads like a movie. I didn't design it. I didn't write the script. I just stumbled around in it. It's like
you were honest
in my head.
Yeah. No,
okay,
that's all that takes.
So you guys, I'm gonna make sure that the browser stays on, and you're gonna have that. When do you think you're gonna air this?
2 weeks from now.
Okay, but just let me know.
I will. I'll tag you in all the socials.
Is it gonna be on YouTube?
It'll be on our podcast, and I'll share it on LinkedIn as well, right? So
it'll be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So
that's accessible. All right. Nice talking with you.
All right. Appreciate your time, Jack.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Take care.